Coach, one of the things I'm really interested in is take me back to 1980, and you're sitting down with your coach at Hopkins, and he asks you what you want to do with your life. And I want to know what you said to him in that moment, and then what you actually ended up doing.
um, wow, that's a great start. um, it was simple for me, Sean. I wanted to coach. You know, I just felt, um, in my nature that was something that I was passionate about. I love the sport of lacrosse. I really didn't want to leave it on my last year. It really has given me almost everything in my life to some degree on the path that it's taken me. So, and even to that point, it just meant so much to me. So I told him I wanted to coach lacrosse, and he actually um, made a call to Coach Scroggs, Willie Scroggs at the time, and we had just played them in two national championships prior, and Coach Scroggs was a Hopkins alum, and Coach Chick knew he was looking for some help, and talked to Coach Scroggs, and he offered me a job to come down there and be an assistant coach. Really didn't even talk about what I would be doing, and I just two things that distinctly stand out about that conversation. One, the pay was $2,000 for the year, and the other thing, he said he'd find me a job, and if I wanted to go to school, they would help kind of figure out a way. And I told him I had no plans on going to school anymore. I was just thankful to even graduate from Johns Hopkins University. Still have those dreams, when you wake up and you're like, damn, did I really do that? And then, long story short is I ended up not taking that opportunity. A teammate of mine, Mark Greenberg, who was a great, great player, basically put me in a shoulder headlock and drugged me into an interview for a mortgage company. And I spent 3 hours interviewing for a job, and I got the job. And the pay, Sean, was this is 1983 now, right? Like 83, right? The pay was $50,000 a year in a car.
Mm.
And I called my oldest brother, John, and I'm like, what should I do? And he's like, wait a minute. So you're talking about coaching for 2000 and you're getting offered a job for 50. Do I really have to answer that question for you? And that was kind of the conversation. And you got to understand something too. A little bit of the driver was that our family was really poor. Like, we had no money growing, literally. And so the thought of, actually being able to make some money and have the flexibility that might give me at that time in my life. So that's the direction I went in. And, that's kind of how that story unfolded.
So then I'm curious, fast forward a few years, and I think you start tuning in a bit more to your heart and decide to get back into coaching. I'm just curious now with some years under your belt and some hindsight looking back, how do you think about what brought you back into coaching a few years later?
Yeah, I mean, that was it never left.
Mm.
It never left. It just took a different form. So when I started in business, I just took all the things that we learned in from Coach Chick and Coach Smith, and just be a good teammate. Work hard, show up on time. Don't complain. Finish the job. Blah blah blah. So that's the approach I took to work. And then I was very lucky. 2 years into that venture, I was able to start my own business with a partner that I met in the mortgage side of things, and we created an environment of a team, and
Mm.
and I basically coached my business. So all along it was still in me, and then it was a blessing. We were making good money at the time, and getting married and having kids, and that business afforded me the ability to coach all the way along. In 1986, I was a volunteer coach at Johns Hopkins University from 86 to 90. So I was blessed to be able to kind of have the flexibility to follow my passion through work, right? So, but at the end of the day, and I could flash forward many years, I remember having this conversation with Lori one night coming home from coaching a youth league. I think it was either Mark or Matt's team, I forget, in lacrosse. And, she's just like, what's wrong? And I said, I feel so at home when I'm on the field with those kids. I can't, it just won't go away. Like it just keeps calling me out there. And I've always felt like I was at my best self when I was on a field, when I was around kids, when I was being able to coach and help and instruct. So it never left. It always was in there. It was just a matter of what version it was taking along that path. And then it became such a driver and such a piece of me that I couldn't like kind of suppress it anymore. Right. It had to come full service. I had to just dive all in. And that's really what it came down to. And that was a really interesting time in our lives. Just making that final leap into saying, all right, I'm going to do this full time and we're going to let God take us wherever he's going to take us. And I tell you, Sean, it has been an incredible journey since. So I'm very grateful.
Coach, what advice do you give to players or other coaches who come to you? They've got that deep internal driver within themselves as well. There's a disconnect between what they're actually doing and what they feel inside. I'm just wondering what advice you give to them, knowing your own experience.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? Like, I think it's trying to figure out where that balance is, right? Like everybody says, follow your heart, follow your heart, follow your heart. And I get that. But sometimes it's not practical, right? And I think what makes it really work is figuring out when and where and why. And there's a timing piece of it too. Like, so what I do is I don't really give advice. I listen. I try to listen to where that person is in their life and what's pulling them to go in that direction. Because sometimes it just might be, my experience has been, it might just be an escape. Okay. Sometimes it just might be, it might be that calling is just overwhelming and they can't suppress it and they don't want to suppress it anymore. So I listen, I ask a lot of questions. I try to figure out where they are in their lives. And I try to help them if that really is the best decision at that time, because I think that's critical. Because sometimes jumping just because your heart tells you to do so may not be the wisest thing at that point in time in your life, and sometimes it may be, right? Like it just you don't know. But I do tell them to listen to it, and I do tell them to continue to ask those questions of where it's coming from and what the ultimate motivator is, see if it's true or not.
Coach, it's funny you talking about actually listening and truly getting underneath the surface of what they're actually yearning for. They're running away from something. Is it something they're truly deeply into? It makes me think of two words I was thinking about this morning, just reflecting on my time with you. And there were two words that start with C: connect and care. Those are the two words. When I look back on our time, I go, that dude deeply cares, not just about me, but I felt like everyone on that team. And then connect. It was like, you have a way to connect with individuals that I think is extremely rare. And I'm just wondering, you hear the word connect. What do you think of?
Well, first of all, I gratefully appreciate the compliment. When you coach, I think the ultimate goal for me coaching is that connectivity, right? I think that's what we're called to do. I mean, we're called to connect. We're called to listen. We're called to inspire. We're called to lead. So when I hear connect, I take it as, there's a few ways to look at that. Like, I looked at each one of you guys as complete individuals, and that's how I look at every team I've ever coached. And I think the onus is on me to establish the relationship with you that allows us to have that connectivity. So each one of you is, yes, ultimately it's the glory of the team that you're trying to build, but I don't think you can build the team without building each individual first. And so my motive was always to get to know you, to really know what's motivating you, what your desires are, and then really how can I help you get what you want? Because that to me is the ultimate challenge for a coach is to take those individuals, each one of them having motivations separately, combine them to focus on the collective good, but achieve individually what they all want to achieve, right? And I don't think there's a way to do that without connecting with people and really getting to know what that motivation is. So
Mhm.
that's the ultimate goal. And then the ultimate goal is to care. Like, I mean, every kid I've ever coached, and I you know, this is part of who I am. I care for deeply. Whether there were some kids that don't like me and I particularly didn't like them, but it didn't mean that I don't care for them, right? And ultimately, I think that's another thing that we're called to do is to show and to really care. Like I want to know if there's something bothering you. I want to know that there's an area of life that you're confused about that maybe I can help with or support with. I want to know if things are great in your life, and you guys having kids now, and I hear all just I think that's the blessing of the job is those relationships, and they last forever.
Mhm.
So
Coach, walk me through just your internal journey. And I think of it as discovering who you are as a coach, and obviously, even more importantly, who you are as a person. And I'm just wondering what that evolution was like for you looking back on your coaching career. When did you feel and understand what you're talking about now? Like some of these deeper principles. Was this obvious to you at the get-go, or did it take time?
um, I think there was a piece of it that was always in there for me. I had a kind of a weird journey, not a weird journey, a journey in life that's everybody's unique, right? Everybody has unique pieces, and that's something you learn through coaching too. Is like all of you guys are individuals. You all have your own stories. We all have our own stories, right? Some of them are a little different than others, but um, I think a big part of me, uh, and you hit on it, Sean. Like it's just a constant evolution for me to really find out who I am, and it goes on every day. I wake up and I still ask the same questions. What kind of person, who are you? What kind of person do you want to be? Where am I going? How do I get there? Just continuing to try to figure out and strip away the pieces that I don't like and kind of build the pieces that I do like. So, but I think it goes back a little bit to my childhood. But we had 5 kids in our family, 4 older brothers, 3 older brothers, myself and a younger sister, and it's kind of a dysfunctional family in a way. We had a lot for each other, and my mother she's a saint. God bless her. And my dad wasn't such a great dad, and he had some problems. And as you get older, you realize that like, dang, he just had no way to get help. He was severe diabetic. He was a severe alcoholic, kind of verbally, physically abusive at times, things like that. And my escape was sports. Like that's where I always felt comfortable was just being on a baseball field or a football field or just shooting hoops across the street with the neighborhood kids and everything. So when things were crazy in the house, I would just leave and go play ball. And those guys all became like my salvation. They were my
Mhm.
brothers. And so I think it started there. So every team I ever played on, I looked at as my family. Um, and then as you grow older, you know, you start to realize that, again, trying to figure out who I was as a person. I always felt better when I was involved with a team.
Mhm.
I always felt I was part of something that was bigger than me, and I liked that. And it kind of took me away from things that I would worry about that I didn't like. So I think that's part of the evolution. big influence on my life when I was at Johns Hopkins. And I could almost name Sean every coach I've had in every sport I've had.
Mhm.
If you had the time and you wanted to quiz me on it, from the time I was 8 till I graduated from Johns Hopkins University, that last team that I played on. Those guys have all had impacts in my life in a positive manner. And I think that's also a driver for me, seeing that not having a really strong father figure in my life, what that person could do, and just by a simple compliment or a pat on the back or a that a boy, how that could make a person feel. And I think that was a big motivator for me. Again, looking at why I coach and why I want to be around young men and women, or whoever, people in general. And then Freddie Smith had a big impact. He was an assistant coach at Hopkins. He's a legend. And he kind of took me under his wing, because early on in my career at Hopkins, I struggled. Freshman year, I was a mess. I didn't feel like I belonged. I came from an environment that was so foreign to where I was. I grew up in a really small town, moved to a farm. I was a tobacco farmer as a kid. Public school, and then I ended up going to private school by the grace of God, which got me to Hopkins, and I just felt out of place. And then my family was going through a lot of issues at the time, and I wasn't doing well in school. It was really hard. And Freddie really took me under his wing, and he was the first person that ever really sat me down and looked me in the eye and said, "Hey, you've got a lot in you. And I see it in you, but you got to start to figure out how to bring it out yourself." And kind of gave me that talk, right? You know what that talk is, right? And that kind of pushed me over the edge. That, you know what, I need to, excuse my language, kind of straighten my shit out, right? And I wasn't a bad person. I was just torn in so many different directions, right? And I had to get over that insecurity of not belonging. And he gave me the ability to kind of say, "Hey, you do belong here, and you can do this." And I think that was a big turning point in my life. And I think that's kind of been the constant for me, is looking myself in the mirror, trying to realize where my faults lie, and how every day can I get better. And then also try to help somebody else along that journey as well. So I know that's kind of a really long answer
No,
to that question, but
believe me, a lot of things
those
I
are
want
the
to dive
motivators.
into. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
there's you didn't know that there was so much in there, did you, Sean?
there's always layers in depth, huh?
Yeah.
But the conversation you had with Freddie Smith makes me think of another great UNC legend and duo was Anson Durance, the head coach of women's soccer, and Mia Hamm. And he tells this amazing story. Mia, her freshman year, they're having their quarterly or bi-yearly meeting, comes in the office. He asked her what she want. She bright-eyed freshman, kind of blabbing some stuff, doesn't really know. He lets her finish. He goes, "What do you really want?" She goes, "I want to be the best." He gets up, he walks over to his light switch, flicks it off. Room goes dark, flicks it back on. He goes, "You want to be the best. It is a moment by moment choice that you've got to be fully committed to every single day." And he goes, "That's what being the best is." I bring that up because Freddie Smith talking to you, and I think some of the best coaches and leaders I've ever had in my life, like you said, they sit you down, they look you in the eye, they tell you what they see in you, but it's also something that you've got to go do and go earn yourself. And I'm just wondering how now you think about that when you're on the other side of the conversation, looking at a young man in the eye. What are you doing for them to help cultivate their ability to get the best out of themselves?
Yeah, there it is, right? That's the challenge, right? To create an environment. I believe you have to create an environment that every single person on that team wants to be their best version every day. That's my job. Like, as a coach right now, I coach for the Boston Cannons. And so we have a saying in our program. It's not really a saying. It's kind of an acronym. It's MPST. So what I encourage and what I search for and try to help our players attain is every single day. See, when you go back to the everyday part, I think that's the key in this whole thing, consistency, right? Like, we all have our ups and downs. We all have our ins and outs. We all have our moments of glory. We all have times like, dang, I don't think I can do this anymore. It's what I've realized, and you've realized this through your studies. It's the people that are just consistently striving, right, to be that best version every day. Like that's the key is every day. So what we talk about as canons is, we're gonna we call them buckets. We're gonna fill these buckets up every single day. All right, you're gonna fill the mental bucket up every day. So what are we doing mentally to enhance ourselves as canons, and as individuals, as dads, as business partners? Because I'm coaching professional athletes now that also do have full-time jobs. So mentally, are we meditating? Are we doing some yoga? Are we doing some breath work? Are we reading anything or that can help us sharpen that mental edge, right? So that's the M part. P is the physical part. What are we doing every day physically? From our exercise routine, how to prepare ourselves physically to be ready for the season, how to prepare ourselves physically to be ready to approach a business meeting or whatever that may be. S is spiritual. As you know, and my faith is extremely strong. I think that's a big component in our development and our growth. I ask our guys, we talk about faith a lot in our program, and it covers a gambit. We have kids that are really strong, devout Christians and then we have, guys like Adam Gittleman who believe in Buddhism and Hinduism and takes the spiritual pieces from all that. But I think you have to develop that piece every day in your life, whatever direction you're going in, and you got to look at different things and see where that spiritual piece is affecting your life and where it can help your life. And then the last piece is tactically. How do we become tactically better every day to get ready for a lacrosse game? How do we tactically get better every day to prepare for a Zoom call with a potential client? How do we tactically get better every day to be a parent? To how can I help my child grow and develop? And we focus on filling those buckets every day. Now, some days, my prayer is they all get filled, right? But reality sets in, and some days they all are approached, but they may get filled at different levels, right? As you know, someday you wake up and physically you could dominate. You feel like that exercise program wasn't enough, like you could do more. Some days your spiritual life just seems to be welling up inside, and you could spend an hour or two meditating or yoga or reading. But at the end, what I encourage them to do, and what I think helps their growth, is spending time every day in those buckets and giving it the best that you can, right? And fill them the best that you can. So I think that's kind of where your question started a little bit about. That's how I believe that I can encourage them to continue to find that best version, because ultimately I want a team full of young men that are seeking to be that best version. Because if we're doing that, then we're heading down the path that will ultimately lead to their success in whatever that may be. So.
I love the big buckets there, and obviously the clarity of vision, what you're going after individually, tying that into the whole as well. I'm curious, Coach, are there things that you implement now when you look back 20, 30 years, you go, you know what, I wish I implemented this sooner in my coaching?
Yeah, I think yes, 100%, 100%. There's just so much more access right now. I think the bigger piece for me right now, Sean, is the confidence, is the self-belief. Back in the day, right, there was a lot of tough love in coaching, and I still think there's an area for that. And now it's more, the pillars of our lacrosse program. One of them starts with honesty, right? It's just having honest conversations with yourself, and then with teammates, and then with coaching to players. But I think back in the day, it was more of just kind of like trying to pound guys into submission versus filling their bucket with more confident and self-belief. Like the brain, I've done a lot more, not research, but I've been the neuroscience piece of it to me is really fascinating. Listening to the hot commodity right now is Andrew Huberman. I spent a lot of time listening to his podcast and just fascinating how you can actually switch your brain from maybe being negative or not self-confident to just being positive and being more self-confident. So I think that's an area where 20 years ago, I wish I could have done a better job of is helping you guys see yourselves maybe in a better light and giving you some tips that might help you be able to do that, on your own. Right. I didn't have that kind of knowledge. It was more of gut feel. And I still think that's a big part of coaching is that feeling about a kid and again, having that conversation, trying to figure out what's motivating them or what's wrong and helping them through it. But I think there's more tactical ways now with the brain to get young men in a better spot and more confident to compete. So,
what do you do when you doubt yourself?
I pray a lot. I really ask the Lord, like, why is, where is this coming from? There's got to be an area that, and this may sound arrogant. I have a lot less of that nowadays. I think that comes with age and it comes with wisdom.
A lot less arrogance now.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot less doubting, a lot less self-belief. I have more confidence in my ability to overcome any situation that might lead me to doubt it. But if it does arise, it's coming from somewhere. It's obviously it's almost I guess it's an emotion to some degree. And where is it stemming from? And so instead of ruminating in it a little bit, I kind of take a step back and ask why and where this may have surfaced, and then try to zero in on that, and then realize that there was 90% of the time self-doubt. There's no reason for it. Right. And if I'm doing the things that I preach, if I'm really spending time in those buckets, then that should alleviate or try to eliminate any kind of self-doubt whatsoever, because I am putting in the work. Right.
I mean, I think you hit on it right there. I'm putting in the work. You think self-doubt is on, let's call it like the surface of a layer of water, right? It's right there at the surface. Your comment, I do the work. Let me go one layer deeper, right? Instead of just being in that downward spiral of self-doubt and everything, it's like, let me do a little work here. Let me push up against reality here. And it's just like, does this actually make sense? And then let me continue to get my mind going a different direction. It takes work though. And you've got to be committed to that. I'm intrigued by your confidence though, or your comment about how you have confidence now more, like it kind of evolved over time. Makes me think C.S. Lewis has this great line. It's experience. The most brutal of teachers, but you learn. My God, do you learn? And so I'm wondering for you, coach, like what can't you learn sooner? You could tell you tell a 35-year-old this, and it just for some reason he's got to wait to 55 to learn it. Is there anything like that you've come across, or do you have a different take on it?
No, because I think that's kind of because one size doesn't really fit all. Like when it comes to this stuff, what may be really fascinating to me, like again, I go back to my faith. Like I'm utterly fascinated with the thought of heaven and the next life. Like but that may not mean anything to you, right? Like so I think it's not a one size fits all thing. I think what I would continue to encourage people to do is not let those moments go to waste, whether you write them down or you journal them or so whatever those moments are that you feel like this could be a critical teaching or learning point in your life, just set with them a little bit and really trying to get the lesson out of them. And I think that's something I've done well. I think I think I've tried not to let the moments pass without really recognizing them to some degree, good or bad. Like, why is this happening? How did it happen? What can I learn from it? How am I going to become better out of this? And focusing on that, and I think that's helped. It's helped my growth exponentially, and it's also helped me to manage my relationships with you guys, with the people in my life. Just don't take anything for granted, I guess, maybe is what I'm getting to. But I don't think one size fits all, Sean. I said that before. I think everybody's got to see things in their own light, and that becomes personal to them, and that creates that piece, right? Because it is personal. It's you. It's not me. So
I mean, I think that's probably the genius in that, is the understanding of that one size doesn't fit all, and being attuned and aware of what the different players are actually thinking internally and what's happening for them, what's their experience. And you talk kind of just that individual awareness of the moment, whether it be good or bad, and then being able to look into it while that's happening. What do you think you were doing in the early days just to even cultivate that ability? Because I'm sure you've seen plenty of people who, they've got plenty of years under their belt, but they don't have that ability. So is there anything that you've been doing over the years you think just helped with that?
um yeah, I go back to faith and prayer. It's if I can make a consistent in my life, from the time I was, really when even before I got married, in my early 20s, probably mid to early 20s. The one thing I've been consistent about is my morning prayer routine and ritual. A lot of things have changed, right? Kids, jobs, grandkids, houses, but my faith and my morning routine has never wavered, never
Mm.
wavered. I don't think I've missed a morning. I don't know if I've ever missed a morning since I was 23 or 24 years old, because that was my anchor at the time. Again, not not like I've been on my own. I'll make this simple. I've been on my own pretty much since I've been 12 years old. Not having a dad, having older brothers. They weren't around much. My mom was working two jobs. Um, there was nobody telling me I had to be in at 10 or come home on time or whatever. So, God has really blessed me with the ability to kind of make sense of all of that. And I had my moments, right, pressing the boundaries a little bit, but there was always something calling me to just be a better person, right? And I'm not looking for, I don't know, and I think that's part of the Holy Spirit. I think that's part of the faith that I've had. But that's been my driver is that routine, and I think that's allowed me to settle in to the moments, and it's also given me strength to continue to push on when I didn't think things were good, and it's also given me glory when I had our first baby and bringing Matthew home in the car and from Johns Hopkins Hospital and sitting down the next morning and saying, "My God, I'm an actual parent." Like, thank you, Lord. Like, so it covers all the bases for me. So that's been my consistent.
Coach, how
Yeah,
old are you this year? Are you 64?
I'll be 64 in November.
64 in November. You said, I don't think I've missed a morning since I was 23. Wow.
Yeah, I can earn. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, no way, no way.
I just bring this up because obviously I think that comment, and you would probably attest to this, like there are so many layers to your commitment, your faith, and the consistency there. But I think even younger players hearing this, it's like, you guys say you're consistent. Look at that consistency. There's a different depth to this. I just think that's incredible. And something that you brought up a few times here is fatherhood, having children. And I bring that up because I had a unique experience. And I think I talked to you about this on the phone maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. So I got to see you coach your son, Marcus. So I was a senior. He's a freshman. father coaching son in college. I can't imagine how challenging that is from both perspectives. So I was appreciative of the challenges there. The father son bond I saw you and Marcus have during that year at Carolina. I can't say I've ever seen a father son bond so strong, let alone so strong in a complex environment like a team like that. And I was so envious of you and what you must have had to do for, call it, 18 years to be able to get to that point where your son looked at you like that, meaning so much love, so much respect, so much joy, so much compassion, and seeing you do that as well. And so I'm just curious, mentioning not really having a father figure growing up, what the hell did you do as a father to create that type of bond?
You got me between crying and laughing here,
Yeah,
Sean.
right.
You're
It's a good
doing a
spot to
great
be.
job. You're doing a really good job. You can get those two emotions going on at the same time. A plus, A plus. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you something, and I've told you this before. You had I think if you would ask Marcus Holman, go back to his Carolina years and name someone that had severe impact on his life. I venture to guess, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. Your name's your name is at top of the list. You showed him the ropes that freshman year because, as we both know, that the program was in a kind of a funky state. Change is and there was some dysfunction within the family there, right? But you were the guy that he looked to, and I've always held a part of my heart to thank you for that because you showed him what being tough and what being a Division I athlete was all about with your work ethic, and your ability to bring him along because there's not a lot of seniors sometimes that will look to a freshman and say, come on, I'm going to kind of show you the ropes here, bud. And you did that. And I think he carries that with him to this day. He's a phenomenal leader. And I think you were a phenomenal leader as well. So I've always appreciated that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I'm blessed. The one thing I promised myself and my wife is first of all, we wanted to have a bunch of kids. But I promised her from the depths of my heart, I was going to be a good dad. I was going to figure this shit out. And ultimately, Sean, that was the driver for me. You talk about coaching. I had several opportunities when the kids were growing up to take full-time coaching jobs, and I didn't take them. We didn't take them. Lori and I are, we'll be married 37 years in November, and that's you talking about the thing I'm most proud of is that, like, by bar none. We didn't take those jobs because I always felt that once I had kids, that was my number one priority. So I was going to do everything in my power to provide them with everything that they needed to grow up and be successful people. Being a full-time Division I coach back in those days, even today, it's even worse. The time constraints are incredible. You're working 12, 14-hour days. You don't have to, but most of those guys do. You're on the road mostly all summer doing recruiting events and so on and so forth. And I mean, you do miss. If you ask most coaches, the thing that really hurts them in their life, is that they do miss a lot of their kids' time. And I wasn't going to do that. So I chose to get my coaching fix through coaching their teams, right? Matt, Mark, Sid's, all of them. So it started there with an unwavering commitment to trying to be the best dad I could be. And then it was simple for me. I just looked at all the things that I didn't have and was like, I'm just going to do the opposite, So, and then, look, to be a good dad, you have to have a great mom, and that you have wonderful parents, and it isn't a solo job. So, Lori and I, as a team, I think we did a great job with all of our kids. But I think the relationship with Mark and I is different because we've traveled this road together, right? and the one thing that we promised each other from the get-go was that we would never take any of those moments for granted. Like just don't take them for granted. Being able to walk out, heck, that 1 year, 2 years, Matthew and Marcus were on the team. To be able to be a dad and go out on a lacrosse field, things that you love to do as a family, and see your two boys out there, and have a factor into their life at that point. Like, what kind of dad would I be if I took it any other way with just sheer gratitude, right? And that's all it was. It was just being so dang grateful. And then later that day, Sydney was a freshman, and I think Mark was a senior. Later that day, I'd get a knock on my office door and be Sid saying, "Hey, Dad, you want to go get a bite to eat?" So like, I was such a lucky person to be in that environment. But I think I think at the end of the day, our love for each other, and we just didn't let the sport get in the way of loving each other as a father and a son, and all my kids. Like, why are we going to let that get in the way? And it should be something that we enjoy doing, and we did, and it was a blessing. And to this day, I still get a chance to coach Mark. Like, think about that. Like, he's 33 years old now, and I'll never forget. Right before our first game last year as Cannons, he comes up, we give each other a big hug, and we smile and we laugh, and we just like, let's have fun. And that's our approach. So yeah, very lucky. Thank you.
I would say having fun out there on the field, you and Mark embody. I think it's pretty apparent, anyone who's looked at you guys, that you're enjoying what you're doing. But I've got to dive into that comment you made a second ago about the 37 years being married to Lori. That's what you're most proud of. What's the insight underneath that response there?
Oh God, I'm not the right person to ask this. Again, when one size certainly doesn't fit all. Again, for me personally, you'd have to ask her. I'm sure she has a lot more to talk about this than me. At the end of the day, it's commitment, right? Like, thick and thin, good and bad, the marriage vows, like that all that stuff. It's not stuff. It means something, right? And like I tell her, we've had these conversations at times, like, and she said this to me. There's times when I don't like her, but I certainly always love her. And you have to, you've got to navigate those roads. But at the end of the day, we chose to be married to each other, and we chose to raise a family, and we chose to build a life together. And we choose to continue to honor those commitments every single day, to the best of our abilities. And there's no magic sauce to that. But I think one thing I will say today is, if it's easy, then why bother? If it's easy to walk away, then something's wrong, right? It shouldn't be easy. And I know there are extenuating circumstances where couples can't make it work. I get all that. I'm not saying that no matter what, but we chose to be committed, and that takes forefront over everything. So yeah. And I love her to death. Like, I don't know what I would do without her. And so
yeah. Coach, you mentioned getting over some adversity, some challenges shouldn't be easy. Throughout your coaching career, some incredibly challenging, let's call them turning point situations, opportunities, everything like that. When you think about challenges for you, which one comes to mind?
Oh boy. Again, maybe one day you can show me how to write a book. My wife begs me to write books. I mean, it's been a consistent part in my life, Sean. There's not one. I mean, there's a challenge when you don't have any. My mom doesn't have any money to pay the rent, and you got nowhere to go as a kid. There's a challenge when you have to, work in a hot tobacco field all summer to help her pay the rent. There's a challenge when, you know, your father comes to your only game at Johns Hopkins University and he's, you know, absolutely in the bag and yelling and screaming. You got to tell your brothers to like get him out of there. There's challenge in starting businesses from scratch, and then in getting that business literally yanked away from you for the people that you sold it for what was supposed to be millions of dollars, and you got pretty much nothing out of it. You fought it in court, but you can't win. You know, there's challenges in literally, you know, taking your daughter to the hospital with what everybody thought was a flu, but she had a burst appendix and nobody diagnosed it right. And she was about an hour away from dying, and watching her go through surgery. And, you know, there's challenges in literally uprooting your family, which everything in your life that you worked for was to be consistent because you didn't have any consistency when you were a kid, and saying, hey, we're going to move to North Carolina. And I really don't have a job because I'm the volunteer and I got to figure out a way to make money down there. And you do it and your family embraces it with you. There's challenges when you're down there when the stock market crashes and you had a lot of money on the margin because you were trying to get from point A to point B, and you basically lost all your net worth overnight. And you are trying to build a business down there to make a mortgage payment. You know, there's challenges when you have people at Carolina where it's tough to work with, but you got to figure out a way to make it work. And there's challenges when you go to Utah and you have to start a program from scratch with a donor, and you basically work like a dog for 2 years and you get the program on the map. And then there's issues with funding and there's issues with the athletic department, and they fire you for basically giving your whole life to that situation. There's challenges moving back home into a little teeny condo when you've lived in big houses all your life because it's the right thing to do. And there's challenges of taking over the Boston Cannons when you never ever thought that you would coach again, and they were the worst team in the league, but we took them to being one of the top teams in the league. So, you know, I could write chapter and verse on every one of those, but every one of those happened, and every one of those is real, and every one of those is overcome. And then whatever the next challenge will come into my life and our lives as families, that will be overcome as well. And they're all glorious in their own right. And that to me is the beauty of all this, is accepting what comes your way, having the support and the wherewithal through faith and family and belief in yourself to get through it, and then to continue to find the blessings in every single one of them. And then when guys like you ask me questions, being able to take some of that wisdom and maybe help you, guide you along the way. So you're capable of accepting those challenges because you're not going to avoid them. All right. Doesn't happen that way. All right. What armor am I going to have to be able to put on to defeat them? And that's the beauty of life in general right there. So
that's an incredible 5 minutes right there, Coach. I'm going to be playing that one back. I can tell you that. Let's look at some of the glory moments. How many championships have you been involved with?
Oh my gosh. Let's see.
Good.
4 with Hopkins. 4 with Hopkins, and how many were with Carolina? We had 4 with Hopkins as a player, 2 with Hopkins as a coach, and 1 with Carolina as a coach. So what's that? 4, 5, 6, 7 national championships, 9 Final Fours. We had 2 Final Fours at Hopkins as a coach where we didn't make this shit. So it's 9 and then 7 national championships. And have only won 3 out of the 7. So sub 500 in the championship world, Sean. But, you know, the blessing to be there. So.
Yeah, I'd say so. You have a most memorable moment on the field?
I wow. I would say distinctly three things. So like it's not really fair, and I know that's not the question you asked, but I'm going to go in the direction I want to go.
I think you've
So
heard that, coach.
so 80 19 1987 as a coach at Johns Hopkins. We played Cornell in the. Let me back up. 1983, we lost to Syracuse in my last game as a college player, and we had just lost. We won as a freshman. I didn't play, and then as a sophomore, we lost to North Carolina. I think it was 14-13 in an incredible lacrosse game. And then as a junior, we lost to North Carolina 7-5. In both of those games, that like a sophomore year, I had like 22 or 23 saves. In my junior year, let up 7 goals. I think I had 26 saves. It was probably one of the greatest games I've ever had. But we lost, and you felt like shit. So and then my senior year, we had the best team in college lacrosse. We were steamrolling everyone. And we beat North Carolina in the semifinals, kind of got revenge on them. And then we're playing Syracuse in the national championship game. And we go up 12-5, Sean, with 8 minutes and 14 seconds left in the third quarter. And the wheels on the bus absolutely fell off. We lost that game 17-16. And it literally, I should have played that in my chapters of overcoming adversity. It literally
Lock that one out.
I just, to some degree, I couldn't. I just remember standing on the field with all my family around and my mother hugging me and just bawling my eyes out. I've never cried that hard in my whole life. It just crushed me. We put everything in our power into that game, and we just fell apart at the end. And so that's a bad memory, but it also it's empowering because you got to move on, right? And that was the last game. I never played in another lacrosse game. It was the last game I've ever played in. I didn't play club lacrosse. I played 1/4 of club lacrosse, and it was about 31 degrees in February. I was at the University of Maryland, and we were playing Maryland. And I must have gotten hit by like 8 shots, and I was like 24, 25 years old. And after the game, I walked in the locker room. I would never tell. Arlie Marshall was a great coach for Maryland Lacrosse Club. Back in the day, those were powerhouse teams. Maryland Lacrosse Club was like one of the best. And I'm like, Coach, I'm done. And he's like, what do you mean you're done? It's like, I'm not doing this anymore. And that was it. I never played another game. So I remember that. In 1987, we had a really impactful moment in my life. Fred Smith, who was our defensive coordinator, we were playing Cornell in the national championship game. Freddie was diagnosed with lung cancer 2 weeks prior to the Final Four. Drove up. His wife drove him up to Rutgers, and we're playing Maryland in the semifinal game. And Maryland was undefeated at the time, 16-0, and we had lost to Maryland during that season, 16-4. And that for Hopkins to lose to Maryland 16-4 is like otherworldly back then. Like that just did not happen. So we were playing them in the semifinals, and they were really good. And Freddie had lung cancer, and he was really, really, really sick. And his wife drove him up. He didn't come up on the bus. Everybody knew that if Freddie didn't get on the bus, something was not good. And I'll never forget him walking into the locker room about 10 minutes before we were going to take the field. And Freddie used to wear a blue windbreaker, Hopkins blue back then, a Jay's cap, and he always wore a towel around his neck, no matter what. Like that was his thing. And he comes strolling in there, and he was. It shocks me now that I think about it, but Freddie was like 60 or 61 or 2 at that time, my age. He looked a lot older. And the team just, basically just. He meant so much to everybody on that team. It just took us to a whole new level. Mm. And we come down the steps, and we're getting to take the field. And we have a tradition at Hopkins. You always run on and off a field. It's just always been a tradition. Any time you approach a field, you run onto it. Show that you're ready. Give kind of honor to the field itself, that you're out there to play, and you run off of it. You don't walk. and we're getting ready to come through the end zone, and Freddie's the last one down the steps. It's hotter than all get out. And the team runs onto the field, and I kind of start running, and I turn around and look, and he's like walking. And I was like, "Coach, you okay?" And I was coaching with him then, he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Holman, I'm going to be just fine. Now, you got to run across that field, get going," right? Like that. And he's talking to me like a little kid, right? And I start running across the field, and I get halfway across the field, and I turn around and look out, and there's this guy riddled with cancer, just doing his best to jog across that field and get to that sideline. And I'll never forget that. We beat Maryland, one of the biggest upsets of all time. We played but we played Cornell in the championship game. Freddie went home that night. His wife took him home. We beat Cornell in the national championship game in 1987, and he died 2 days later.
Wow.
So I have that memory from '87, and then I'll flash forward to North Carolina to 2016. Um, you know, went down there with Coach Bresch, and that was a handful. Really, really, really challenging period in my life. 8 years of coaching down there for many reasons, right? Trying to get that program turned around. It just felt like we were so close, but so far away, so many times for so many people. And then just the blessing of that 16 run. It was literally, I have said this many times, I thought it was just the grace of God, just kind of handing it down and saying, you guys are finally going to get it. And then winning that game, just for all of you guys, like looking up in the stands and seeing the literal like glory on the faces of the alums and the people that follow that program and believe in it, the feeling that put into my heart, I'll never be able to replace that. And it was just glorious, that we finally can get that championship for all you guys and all the work that people put into that program. So those are kind of distinct moments for me in those journeys. So
You think there's a difference between some of those exceptional teams you were on and the ones who got all the way over and won the championship?
It's hard because I would say, yeah, I think it's hard because, I looked at that. I go back to '83 and that team we were on, it couldn't have come together any better. Right. We had great leadership from our seniors. We had fought through two tough losses in national championship games. We had great coaching. We had really good younger players that were very talented, and we balanced them pushing for spots versus some seniors holding on to spots. Like, that can become an issue in really good programs, right? And we had it all. We were undefeated. And then but we lost. But I think those components make up championship caliber programs, right? Leadership, commitment. We had exceptional commitment. My junior year, we struggled to get to the national championship game. The only reason we got there is because we were Johns Hopkins, and it was almost like we willed ourselves to that last day. But we weren't a good team. We were dysfunctional from a leadership perspective. Our coaching staff wasn't kind of in lockstep. And we rightly didn't probably even deserve to win that game when we lost 7-5, right? But our senior year, we cured those ills, and we were a much better team and program. But I think all those teams have similar components to it. You can go back and look at the history of championship caliber, programs. They've got great leadership. They've got servant leadership. They've got talent. You got to have ball players, man. You can't do it with smoke and mirrors. But they have an unwavering belief in each other. And they do have a singular focus. However it comes into play. Carolina 2016, we didn't have a singular focus until the bitter end, until it really started gravitating and really became about Coach Bresch's son Michael down the stretch. That sort of galvanized us with incredible leadership to put our best versions out there for a greater good, right? And those are all things that you think about as coaching all the time. Like how can I manifest all of this? And, you know, I don't believe you can, because if you could, like, everybody just put it in a bottle and just, you'd be doing it every year, right? Like, there's special programs, Krzyzewski's of the world and Woodens of the world and Sabins of the world, um, that seem to have it more often than not. So me personally, I spend an inordinate amount of time studying what goes into all that. But so you know, backtrack, rewind. To answer your question, I do believe there are very similar traits into championship caliber programs that you're going to have if you want to get to that promised land. Yes.
Mm. Some of the favorite resources you've gone to over the years in terms of studying, and any individual coaches or resources come to mind for you?
I like to read a lot, so anything that I can lay my hands on of guys that I believe are not manufacturing it, right? Like, so, again, anything that I can see or read that Nick Saban does, I'm doing, because I see a lot of. I'm not comparing myself to Nick Saban, trust me, okay? But I feel a lot of him when I hear him talk. So much of what he says, I believe in, and I've said, like, it comes, it's natural for me. So I don't want to follow someone, or I don't really want to. It's got to be something that sort of resonates, or I can learn from, right? Because I do believe coaching is, you've got to be yourself. You can't manufacture this stuff. Obviously studying what Krzyzewski's done. John Wooden's my hero. Read every single book that's ever been written from Coach Wooden, and I've watched just about every video clip that I possibly could of that man. Because ultimately, to me, he set the standard for what this is all about. The relationship aspect of it, his faith, his accountability standards within himself and his program, the way he lived his life. I want to live a Wooden type life. I'm not there, but I want to. And then the psychology aspect of things. You read stuff about, like, Greg Popovich, and how he creates culture and team, which is different. And I'm kind of leaning more towards that these days, of, like, creating this environment where you can get that best version out of every single player, right? Like, that's his big picture vision.
Yeah.
How do you create that? So yeah, I'm endless when it comes to trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. Yeah.
You mentioned Popovich with San Antonio Spurs. When he was when they were looking at Tim Duncan, I don't know if you heard the story. I'm pretty sure Tim Duncan is from Barbados. Popovich flies down there, spends 2 days with Tim Duncan. Word basketball doesn't come up one time.
Yes.
Talking all about his life. And I think I could see you and I were talking about connection. I heard this story the other day. It stopped me. It just sent chills down my spine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mark Few, coach.
Oh yeah.
At Gonzaga.
Yep.
Incredible guy, incredible program. So a performance coach was working with the team. Asked all the players, let me know the best lessons you've learned from Coach Few this season. All right. So they all list them down. Goes through the entire team's list. They get number 1, number 2. Number 1, how to be a great husband. Number 2, how to be a great father. So the performance coach sits down with Mark Few. He goes, Mark, how many times did you bring up being a great father or being a great husband to your team this year? He goes, I've never once talked about it. Leadership in action. That's who he was. Incredible father, incredible husband. His team picked up on that. I heard that story. I was like, you got work to do, Sean. I was like, you got some work to do. Like, that's
we
incredible.
all do.
Right?
We all do.
It never stops. It never stops.
No.
Coach, we're going to round this out here shortly. I know you got your season beginning here in a few weeks. What's different now as you approach a season? So what are we, 10-ish days, 2 weeks away from the start of a new season?
Yeah.
What's this time like for you? And how would that be different from about to start a season, maybe 20 years ago?
Yeah, some of the commonalities are excitement, just taking another journey, man. Like, it's just, I just get so curious of, like, where this trip is going to lead us. Like, because it's what it is, right? Like we're going to be together now from the end of May to hopefully to September the 15th. A group of people that are going to try to form and forge a bond, and a commonality, and we're going to go through a lot of things, right? It's going to be different than last year. Every year is different. Like there could be more highs and less lows. There could be more lows and less highs. We don't know, but the excitement, literally the sheer excitement of what is it that's going to be in front of us, right? Like I can't sleep like right now, just knowing that that's coming. So you know, but the biggest thing for me, Sean, honestly, is less worry about results, and more enjoyment of the process. That's the 20. Like, 20 years ago, if you would ask me that question, I would be like, we got to win a national championship, and I'm going to be, how do we get there? And it'll be a disappointment if we don't. And like, kind of a lot of that stuff was welling up in me, as a younger coach. I've never been obsessed that way, but that had more control over who I wanted to be at that point. Now it's more about the process. Everybody talks about the process, but we know, the Cannons know what our process looks like. That's one thing. I sent out a questionnaire to the team about 2 weeks ago, and one of the questions on the questionnaire is we talk about Cannons culture and our Cannons process. Explain what that means to me. Both of those, and just so proud the results. What I read through 25 guys' writings was like, all right, they're there, like they get it when they can clearly explain it in terms that we all believe in, and so now to me it's more about the process, the excitement of the process, and where the journey is going to lead us, and what I can do to help navigate that to the best of my ability and help our guys get what they really want. And part of that questionnaire was what their goals were. And, that's what I'm excited about. So more on the process, less on the results.
Yeah. With regards to that process, earlier you mentioned the Cannons have some pillars here. And I think you said one of them was honesty. What are some of the other pillars you've built the program on?
Yeah, they're 5, and they're foundational. They're not, I didn't invent them, but I believe in them wholeheartedly, and our players do too. It's honesty, gratitude, humility, trust, and passion. When I first did it, one of the people that I ran it by, a guy that I have a lot of faith in the coaching world, say, but it should only be 3 because people do best in kind of when they're putting 3s. But I was like, well, 3 doesn't cover it, like those 5 kind of cover it. And he's like, well, so we had to go back and forth. So they're 5. I just think they're foundational, and I talk about it a lot with our team and in our discussions on the weekend is if you build these truths into your life and you really try to live them, no matter what happens, I do believe they'll be the guide, that will take you down a right road more often than not. If we're an honest program, honest with each other, if you're an honest person, you're going to win more battles than you lose. All right. If you're a trustworthy person, you're going to win a lot more battles than you lose. If you're a humble person, same thing. Being grateful to the good Lord, or to whoever you want every single day of your life, is going to help you win a lot more battles than you lose. And as you know, I'm a very passionate about life and people, and coaching. I think that's, in our program, those are the people I want around me every day. I want people that are passionate about, what they're doing. And if they don't have that passion, can I help them find it? And if we can't, then, probably not a good fit for the both of us. Like, so those are our guiding lights, that we hold true, and we hold each other accountable to. And it's worked so far. And I think if you build them into your life, you'll see that they're foundational, and they'll help you navigate what you got in front of you. So,
Coach, I was going to ask you, when it's all said and done, what you want the players to say to you. But I was thinking, hell, I was one of your players. So I'll just tell you the impact you had on me. And so now we're looking, what, 15 years later, moral fiber, the just the fabric of your character, you exude that. It was embodied in your bones, in your DNA, and the people who were around you, they felt it. Even at a 19, 20, 21-year-old, I felt it. Who you were as a father makes me think of that Mark Few story. I go, that when I'm a father someday is what I'm striving for. You talked about passion and they go, holy shit, man, you brought some freaking passion. I was like, I thought I was pretty passionate. Then you hang out with you for a few days and it is like, holy shit, I got to amp this up. And I can tell you one thing, man, I have amped up just my passion for life, the passion for the process, the passion to connect and be around individuals. I got to learn from you firsthand. It was an honor of a lifetime. I'm so thankful for our friendship and the lessons you continue to teach me, Coach. So I love you, man. I appreciate this to depth. I just want you to know the impact you've had on me.
I love you too, bud. I'm just grateful and humbled that that just means the world to me. And again, you got me between the crying and the laughing. So thanks. I appreciate it, Sean. You don't know how much. Thank you.